What's up, everybody?
Yo!
Welcome to the Intentional Podcast. My name's Justin Price. I'm here with the one, the only, Miles Hunter.
Well, what's up, JP?
Hey, man, I'm excited about today's talk.
You know, I'm nervous, but it's going to be great.
I've been leading teams for over 20 years.
Yeah.
And I think that, our first 20 years were just like, we are just learning. And then the next 20 years, like between 20 and 40, is like, it's grind. It is an earning. And I'm coming to the end of that 20-year season where it's like, what is the next chapter after that? And it's cool because like when you're in your 20s, you're not really thinking about legacy. And so today I'm hoping we can unpack some really interesting perspective from you on legacy, as you have recently taken over a church that, believe it or not, has been around
for 30 years.
Right. And is in this stage where like they're coming to that second half of the second 20.
Right.
And eventually going, what is the legacy? What's the next thing look like? The baton was passed to you. Good luck.
Right. And now you're asking me about legacy. I'm like, I'm just trying to get started.
You're just trying to get started.
Right.
But it's like, there's a lot of pressure, I think, put on us as guys. Maybe it's self-induced, but when we're young, it's like, man, let's just earn as much as we can. Let's just grind it out as much as we can. Let's try, especially, guys like you who are super motivated, like high performers. It's just like, man, I'm just going to go hard.
Right. Yeah. I think about the first quote that came to my mind. I love Remember the Titans, my favorite movie in the world. And Coach Yokes is talking to Coach Boone, played by Denzel Washington. And he's like, asking Coach Boone to what lengths will he go to win? Yeah. And he's like, I'm a winner. I'm going to win. Yeah. And that's how I am going to win. Now the question is like, what does that look like in the church world? What does that look like in the world of Christianity? Like, I'll do whatever it is short of sin to make sure that people connect to the life-changing power of Jesus Christ. But I am going to win, but I want to win in a healthy way.
Yeah.
I want to win so that it's a win, not just for the church as an organism, not just for Miles. I don't really care if my name is shown on the front of the screen or not, but I want to win still.
You at least want to be on the winning team.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
You want the ring,
Right,
Like,
yeah,
you want that
exactly.
Super Bowl ring.
Yeah, exactly.
If nothing else.
Right. Yeah. Well, we've already won that.
You're
We've
okay
won
if
the
you're
prize.
not MVP.
Yeah, I'm okay if I'm not MVP.
Yeah.
I don't need to be the MVP. Actually, I would much rather play in the background.
Yeah, but I think as dads, like we've got this drive in us that is like, man, we want to win. We want to leave a legacy. We want to do something like great. I was thinking about, legacy is a cool word because it applies in so many different facets of life. Yeah. Right. Like in the sense of like legacy, your next generation, your kids, right. What people remember you for. Yeah. In the family sense of that, like legacy is pretty cool. You can kind of leave an inheritance or, some sort of like good record, good name to them. Your last name is left on to your kids as a dad. And then like in business, when you do something strong enough in which you cross the threshold into legacy terms, like for me as a business guy, I'm going like, man, I want to leave a legacy for my work. I've actually said, people ask me all the time, what is the goal, with your agency? Like what's the goal at Verse Creative? Like, why are you doing it? Yeah. And I always I have one goal in mind, and that is that when I pass away, I'm done doing this work, which I can't really ever see retiring from. Like, I love the work I do, but whenever I am forced to stop, I hope at my funeral, that there is a line of people, and it's not the people who worked for me or the clients who paid me to work, but that it is their families saying, thank you for building a culture where my dad came home, where you made it so that there was a healthy workplace, where my dad could actually have good boundaries and be there for me and could be involved, or my mom could actually raise me and still work for you or with you. And, or those clients' kids who are like, because we worked with your agency, our organization got healthier.
Right.
And those families all experienced the benefits of those things.
Yeah.
And I'm constantly reminded that like, that's just not the typical like drive of our culture.
Right.
But it is such a heavy weight of like, man, I could work super, super hard. I could grind so hard to make something that is like legacy,
Right.
you know, and leave my character in the dust.
Yeah.
And I could leave so much of what God has called me to behind. And so, you know, we were talking about like, man, like, how do we do this as driven people who are trying so hard to be intentional, you know, with our ministries and with our lives and our families, our friendships? How can we do this right? And, you know, this word is so thrown around like flippantly, and I'm not putting it down that you just threw it. You just said it. I've used it a lot.
Yeah.
But this idea of healthy growth.
Right. What does that mean or look like? Yeah.
Yeah. And so there's you know, one of the things that I think I've seen that I believe in with healthy growth is this word balance, that you're always like trying to find balance.
Yeah.
Maybe another way to even look at it, I've got a friend named Stuart who he likes to refer to it as rhythm.
Rhythm. Yeah. Balance seems unattainable. Rhythm is because you do, like, especially in ministry, there are seasons.
Yeah.
And so like some seasons are heightened. Christmas and Easter are heightened seasons. Excuse me. Whoa, I'm not getting emotional. I'm choking.
Are you okay?
So let's.
Do we need to stop? Okay.
We're gonna survive this. No, but really, like, rhythm is more attainable because it's more realistic. I don't know if attainable is the word. It's more realistic because that's what it is. It is an ebb and flow.
And that's not just ministry.
That's not just ministry. That's life.
Right.
Yeah. No, 100% agree. And so I think you're right. It is finding the right rhythm for your team. But I think for me, one of the things that even I have a vision, you know, board, sheet, document, whatever you want to call it. When
I like vision board. I
board.
can just imagine you being like a mom blogger with your vision board. Like you've got like all the things clipped out of like Elle magazine.
When I think about mom bloggers, it is not this picture. So that's let's revert back to how we define that. But no, when I think about like my vision board, one of the things I wrote on it was like, I want growth and I want our team at TC3 to be home in such a way that where their sons or their daughters look at them and they see their healthy rhythms and they are happy about their rhythm. And that is something that we are trying to figure out and trying to attain and trying to introduce, because we as a team and we as a church run really hard. And so it's figuring out like, yes, there are seasons that we run hard, but it feels a lot like feast or famine. And not a lot like, okay, there is actually like a healthy rhythm to this. And everybody has that, you know, from the student pastor to the kids pastor, to the worship guy, to the producers, to the engineer, the IT, the admins, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so it is trying to figure that out. And it's a tall task. It really is. And so for me, when I think about healthy growth, for our church, it is, I want us to grow, but I know that if we grow and bust out of the seams right now, that our team will rise to the occasion, because I believe most of us, if not all of us, have the mindset that I do. I'm a winner. I'm going to win. We will rise to the occasion and we will meet the task, but I believe to our own detriment. And what you would see sooner or later is you would begin to see our team implode emotionally, spiritually, relationally. And it would look healthy from an outward perspective. Oh, the church is growing. The church is doing good. But I think our team, if we don't do it well, and if we do not prepare well, and if we do not begin to develop healthy rhythms now as a team, we would implode. It wouldn't be good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think if you look at really fast growing churches all across America, you would see some pretty big unhealthy signs that come with the fast growth.
Right.
And so the question is, how fast is too fast?
Yeah.
And how slow of growth, you know, like they always say, if you're not growing, you're
Yeah. If it's healthy,
dying.
It's going to grow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
But like, well, yeah, but well, then how much is
Right.
healthy?
Yeah.
Right?
How do we?
Is 20% a year? Is
Yeah.
50% a year? Is 100, or is it 300% is too fast?
Right.
So engaging that expectation of like, man, we got a new pastor, we got new blood in here. He's going to bring all
Right.
this new energy into our church. You know, like how are you tempering that?
Yeah.
You know, and I know you're bringing your own baggage as
Yeah.
far as the expectations you put on
Right.
yourself
Well,
and other people put on you.
You would think that being real and honest with people would draw people away.
Yeah.
It's not. It's not doing what I and I'm not doing it for that purpose. I'm just being me. Like I'm
Right.
just being transparent, real, honest, and raw,
Right.
and telling people like, hey guys, I suck too.
Yeah.
You know, and thinking that would deter people. But what I'm finding and recognizing is that it's actually drawing more people in.
Okay.
It's a cultural trait of our church, of our staff, especially. You know, we talked about it weeks ago of like we hire guys or girls with a limp. We hire broken people and they're honest and transparent about their brokenness. And what we're seeing as a result is it's drawing more people in. It's not a deterrent.
Mm-hmm.
And so as we navigate through that, you're right. I also navigate through
That's funny.
I always tell people like the expectations I have for me and the standard that I have for myself is greater than any standard anybody will set for me. I'll walk off a stage and you can tell me the message was great, but it's the football in me. You could play 60 snaps in a game and you could play 98% well, but you're only thinking about the 1 or 5 snaps where you jacked up or where you were misaligned. Like it's just, and you're watching film and when you're asleep at night after the game, you're only thinking about those 5 plays. You're not thinking about the other, 55 that you did well and now you graded out as an A. You're just not. And so for me, like that's the thing. The standard I've set for myself is great, but then, you come in on the heels of a 30-year-old church that has done amazing, that has been remarkably healthy, and you get the baton from Pastor Gordon, who did an amazing job even in transition. And you've heard him over the years speak of, I'm praying that one day there will be a Joshua that won't be baptizing 100 people a year, but it'll be baptizing 1,000, to where this will be $1 million a year giving church. And you see all of those things and you're praying that all of those things come to fruition. But there are also moments where you feel the expectation of this has to happen. I have to be like, I am the Joshua. God, like, is this my responsibility? And I have to remind myself often, no, it's not yours. You're just called to be faithful. You're called to pray, preach the word, and prepare, and let me do everything else. This is not your burden to bear.
Yeah.
This is what I get to do. And if I use you to do it, so be it.
Well, I mean, I was reading Joshua the other day, and it's cool that we're like, we're talking about legacy like this. Yeah. And I was just reminded about how cool,
right?
Like how incredible. So like the story as I'm reading through, it's like Moses, he's taken them out of he's exited from Egypt. They're in the desert, and now all of a sudden, like it's time to go take on the promised land,
right?
And Joshua gets to do this, and like all the thing that like I don't know if it never clicked to me when I was younger or when I've read this in the past, was just like, there's all these like little nuances to the land.
Right.
It's actually not just like one people group. It's not just one tribe they're going to kill, they're going to take over, and they've got, and it wasn't just fertile land in the Fertile Crescent that was really doing great, and it was just empty, like it was occupied. This was occupied, phenomenal space. Right. That he's promised the Israelites.
Yeah.
And like, I was just applying this to today. Like, this is like somebody handing you over a chunk of Manhattan. A chunk of the rock.
Right.
Yeah. Or like a big old like island in Hawaii, or like just, an area where it's just like the money's flowing to and from, like this has got prominence.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and these people who are inhabiting it are powerful and dangerous, and they've been able to hold it down because they're kind of a little bit more impressive than the others.
Right.
But the whole time that Moses has got these people, like everyone's kind of like shaking in their boots because they're like, we heard about the whole Red Sea thing. That's kind of cool.
Right.
And also terrifying. I hope the Red Sea people
Don't come up here. Yeah. Don't bring that Red Sea mess up here.
Right.
Yeah.
But what an incredible book, the book of Joshua, where it's just like chapter after chapter of like all these neighborhoods and all of these, tribes and different like, territories of this land that God's got for the Israelites.
Right.
And it's just like, I love that like even Joshua's like job is to fully trust God.
Yeah.
And sometimes God's like, don't bring everybody.
Yeah. Don't just take everybody with you.
Because if you did, it might not be so obvious how freaking good I am.
Yeah.
And I think that is so hard for us to sometimes like apply to today. Because for one, we're scared to death of taking on something as valuable.
Right.
That God really actually has for us.
Right.
And like to really go after something that is generational. I think it's dangerous to even say it.
Yeah. Well, that's what it's the words that I say to people often, like, I'm just trying to stay out of God's way here. Like, I'm just trying to stay out of the Lord's way. Like that's it. I'm just trying to be faithful and stay out of his way. And whatever it is that he wants to do, I don't want to be what's hindering it.
But I feel kind of dumb. Like when I'm sitting down having coffee with somebody and I'm like, yeah, I really think I'm supposed to do something that is like going to create like generational wealth, or I'm going to like leave, and maybe it has nothing to do with wealth, but I'm going to leave such a great impact on the creative space.
Yeah.
And how other creative leaders can lead their teams so much better and make their teams healthier and make their teams, thrive rather than be just draining them and churning them through onto some other job, you know? And like, I feel dumb when I say that. I feel like it's scary to even like proclaim that because I feel like there's always that judgment of like, who do you think you are saying you're going to do something that's going to leave a legacy? Like, bro, like you got a you got a whatever, you're nobody, like, and I'm like, I just believe that is God's promise. Yeah. And I believe that is something that he's called that he's going to do, if I'm obedient and I continue to chase after him. And if I listen, even when it's really scary. And even when he's like, the thing I want you to do, some of the things he's called us to do is like in the pro-life space. And like as an agency owner, running pro-life ads makes Google and Facebook not like you. Right. Well, if you run ads and your main like advertising medium is Google and Facebook, that's scary. Right. That means that at any point in time, they could shut down all of the work we do for all the non-pro-life work. Right. And by the way, like it eliminates us from working with a ton of Fortune 500 companies. Yeah. Because we're actually doing work in the pro-life space and we are brave enough to say it. To do it. Yeah. And like, that's just one little chasm of like, and next thing I know, I find myself like, we're talking through these national campaigns for pro-life organizations and we're talking about $50 million plus ad spends. Yeah. That's stuff that even 5-10 years ago, I never would have conceived. Yeah. And it's not even me. It's so much bigger than anything that I would have thought about that I can not even take any credit for it. Right. And if it's successful, I definitely can't take any credit for it because nobody's been successful in that before. Yeah. And so anyways, I just, I was trying to apply like the Joshua situation to what we think through. And I'm like, I think that guys need to get a little bit of a shot of like, if you're not living with that promise that God has desired for you to do more and to leave a legacy and to live a life that is like that, by chasing him and by surrendering your wants like to him. Yeah. You're missing out.
It's operating in Godfidence is what I call it. Godfidence. And so it is, what's the first thing that God tells Joshua, or one of the first thing that God tells Joshua? He's like, don't let this book of law depart from your lips. He's like, meditate on it day and night, like keep this close. Yeah. And he's like, if you do that, everything you do will be prosperous and successful. And so it's like, you made the promise. I'm adhering to the requirement. My expectation is that you're going to do what you said you would do because I believe that's the God that you are. Therefore, We should be walking in this external Godfidence. That is, if I am doing what God has called me to do or what he requires of me, then he's going to show up like he's the God that he said he would.
Yeah.
Therefore, I can communicate things that I believe the Holy Spirit of God has placed in my heart and say, okay, God, this may be scary, but I'm doing what's required. And so I trust that you got the rest.
Yeah.
And that in itself is challenging. That's hard. As I think about growth, as I think about vision, as I think about what's next for our church, like I see all types of things, but there is still an apprehension in me that says like, man, can you say that out loud yet?
Right.
You've just been in the seat for less than 6 months.
Right. Who do you think you are?
Who do you think you are? Are you going to scare somebody? Are you going to scare people away? Or is it just a you thing?
Yeah.
Is this just about you? And you're really, is this just a lack of trust in what the Lord is going to do?
Mm-hmm.
Or what he said he would do? And so I'm in that space. I'm still, as we're talking, like I'm wrestling with this in real time.
Yeah.
And so like, I believe that God has strategically positioned our church and positioned me in the seat that I'm in for such a time as this to bring quite the disruption to our area, to do something that has never been done, to be a beacon, to be a city on a hill. And I think what God is about to do is about to be something that we're going to look back on in 10 to 20 years and be like, whoa, like we didn't expect that. But there's also something in me that's like, you sure you want to use me? And a part of that is former experiences, because everywhere that I've been, even as a student pastor, everywhere that I've been from Virginia to here, the things that God has allowed me to be a part of, I've never been able to see them into the promised land.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like I've always been the Moses in this situation. It feels like I've always been the starter and trying to jump something into what I wanted it to be, into what I felt God was calling it to be. And I hadn't seen it. Even students at TC3, like it never got to where like I wanted it genuinely to be. It got to where like Janae and I said, hey, we want this student ministry to not run and operate based off of our personalities. And so like we want to build a volunteer army so that like if we were to ever go anywhere, it would continue to run and operate. And it did that in a great way, to the point where we're at camp, our last year at camp, I'll never forget. And we took Addie. Terrible decision. Don't take a newborn if you're a student pastor to camp. Don't do it unless you got somebody there that is positioned to babysit the kid. And Janae,
or if you don't want to keep your marriage,
right? Yeah, or if you want to keep your marriage. And so we're spending 60 to 75% of the time in the hotel room, and Janae's crying, and I'm like, "What's wrong?" And she's like, "It's like they don't even need us. Like the kids don't even need us." And I was like, "Isn't that what we prayed for?" And she's like, "I guess you're right." She's still upset, but like, what we asked for came to fruition. But from a growth standpoint, where I wanted to see students at, it didn't happen. And so now I punch into this transition, and God grants me this seat and the honor to sit in the seat. And I'm like, God, can I get us over the hump? Can I take us to another level? Because I don't know, like if I've had the ability in the past. And God's like, it has nothing to do with you.
Right.
Nothing.
Right.
And like, I have to be reminded of that often. Like it has nothing to do with me. Like I am called to pray, preach the word, prepare, be faithful. Right. And like, and everything else is up to God.
The good stuff has nothing to do with you.
Right. Right. Yeah, exactly. When you see bad stuff, you can come see me.
Right.
Actually, please don't email me. Like I would, please don't holler at me. That'd be great.
But it's like you said, there's a prerequisite to God's allowing you to be a part of what he is doing.
Yeah.
Right. Like when we see churches take big steps back, when we see organizations struggle big time, it's oftentimes where people took their eyes off of Christ.
Yeah.
And they messed that up.
Right.
Right. Like that's not like, it's not God saying like,
God didn't mess it up.
Yeah.
Yeah. God didn't drop the baton.
There's a prerequisite though for you to get to be in Joshua's spot. You said it was to follow the law, hold this law close to your heart.
Yeah.
To know it, to speak it from your lips.
Right.
to fill yourself with this. And, the more I look at Old Testament law, like the ask there was bananas compared to the New Testament law that we follow today. Like the ask there was so much discipline.
Yeah.
Right? Like we're talking about a law that's like, hey, if someone's like watching porn over there, probably just take them to the middle of the town and kill them.
Right. Yeah.
Burn them at the stake to remind you porn is bad. It's gonna corrupt your mind.
There was a lack of grace.
Yeah, I don't think they had porn, per se.
Yeah.
But
adultery.
There was plenty of sexual promiscuity.
Yeah.
And I think about that and I'm like, some days for my like simple mind, I'm like, kind of wish the consequences were more obviously in front of us because it might be a little easier to steer clear.
Away? Would we?
I mean, I just think that it'd be easier if the consequence was so directly getting burned in front of my friends and family.
You'd think twice.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'd process through it.
I hope so.
Look,
I can only hope. I think you would.
All right. Yeah, I think you would.
I think you bring some baggage here with the idea, of it being that Gordon had been praying for Joshua.
Yeah.
And I think some of us are struggling with that same thing where it's just like, is it okay? Like, are we allowed to be excited about that or want to be able to be the guy as God clears out Canaan and gives it to the Israelites and to his people? And the truth is that it's okay to be the guy. It's not okay to say, I need to be the guy. And I think your desire of saying like, I'm okay if I'm not the guy.
Yeah.
If that's what God has, that's a burden I will have to carry. Like I will have to be obedient. I will have to follow the law.
Right.
I will have to, right?
Yeah.
And so like I will be obedient.
Yeah.
And I think that is the difference when we're looking for healthy growth. Almost always there is an obedient leader that is listening to God's calling, but he is oftentimes not necessarily trying to force and make. Now we see a lot of unhealthy growth where leaders are forcing their way forward.
Yeah.
And there's a wake of people behind them. And it's super sad.
Yeah.
It's super sad. And it gives churches a bad name. It gives like Christians a bad name.
Right.
And how does that kind of juxtapose with like your vision as we kind of bring this application home?
That in itself is a tension to manage. The patience and the ability to wait and yet still be an active participant. C.J. Mahaney calls it actively waiting, like trusting God while you're waiting. And I knew stepping into this role that I was stepping into a season of pray, preach the word, prepare. Nothing more. And with that, there has always been this, because our heart's desire is to grow, to one day go multi-site, to build a bridge center. All of those things are still like the vision is still pretty intact of what it has been. But the truth is that like trying strategically to push that vision forward, when I first sat in the chair, God literally was stopping every opportunity and every conversation that I was trying to have as I was trying to push that forward. And he was like, no, your responsibility right now is just to lock into what you got. Like figure out what you have right now. Grow with the church right now. Help them understand what it is that I'm trying to do here before you try and do anything else. And so like, I think it took a good 10 times for him to teach me, wait, you're in a season of waiting. Just wait. It's not time yet. You're not trying to look for strategic partnerships. You're not trying to look for other churches to partner with. You're not trying to build a 17,000 square foot building. You're not trying to do all that right now. And when I decided in my mind that I was like actually going to wait, what God is now doing is he is now investing in the body. And I can see the proof in the fruit of the body, of the actual church. And now the church is growing. And I'm like, wait, this is confusing. I'm very confused. You told me to wait. And now we're suffering with this, healthy, good problem of like, all right, are we going to add a third service? Or are we going to add more seats, know? And I'm like, I thought I was supposed to wait. He's like, no, you still are waiting. And so it's this tension. It's not as Gordon would say, it's not a problem to be solved. It's a tension to be managed.
Right.
And it's trying to measure, all right, God, I'm patiently waiting. I'm being faithful right where I am. I'm not looking for next right now. I may be thinking about it. It's in the back of my brain, but I'm not actively looking for it. I'm just trying to be faithful right here, right now, because I feel like you told me to wait. And so that's where I am. And it's really hard. It's hard for me because I'm like, okay, what's next? How are we going to build? How are we going to grow? What are we going to do? And God's like, just wait, bro. I got you. Be patient. It's going to be okay. And so like, I'm trying to do that and yet still think about future.
So if you're thinking about like, what does healthy growth really look like? If you're thinking about like, man, I'm stale, like I'm stagnant. I'm a dude right now. And like, I have just been getting by and God has more for me. Like this conversation is stirring it up. I heard you say that we got a really good roadmap for what to do with that. First of all, if you do not have that fire in you, like maybe start getting in the word and spending some time praying and going like, God, what do you want to use me, or put in that passion inside of me of what you want me to do so that my life can mean something more. Yeah. So I can leave that legacy. Yeah. If I feel like, man, there's an opportunity, there's so many Joshua opportunities in this season of life right now for so many people. Yeah. And it's different for everybody. Yeah. But man, when I look at like the change that's happening in our culture and our communities, in the church, like there's just so many cool things that are happening. And God is looking for faithful Joshuas that to allow to be a part of that. Like he's calling them, but we have to pick up the phone. Right. And so I would encourage you, if you have been ignoring that, or if you have thought that is too big for me to consider, then I think you should reconsider who it is that is doing the calling. Yeah. And reconsider what it is that you say you believe in that, in that God. Yeah. And so we have an opportunity to be asking God if we're not there, but if we are there, ready to go, and we're ready to go, God, like I want to see this thing happen. Like you said, the first thing was like, we have got to hold his word close to us. We have got to dig in there. We have got to hold his truths, his promises, his word, and be disciplined and obedient to that. If we expect to be a part of any Joshua level legacy building, we've got to hold on. That's like really point number 2. And I think the last thing is knowing that when we do those two things, we will find ourselves in the healthy choice. When we are seeking God and what he wants, and we're driving after his passion, we're surrendered to our visions and our passions. And then we are holding close his word to our hearts. Yeah. Then we will see healthy growth. Yeah. And that is the only thing that I have seen that is consistently working well across leaders who are really achieving that. Yeah.
And I think what the audience should know is like, if you are in a Joshua season and you're pushing when you shouldn't be, that doesn't mean that it's not going to work. It doesn't mean that it's not going to work. It does mean that it probably won't work out in the end for you. From a health standpoint, for your team, if you're leading a team. And so like for me, I'm like, if I'm thinking about legacy, how we started this conversation, I want to build something that lasts. Gordon looks at my daughter all the time and she is like a freaking tank. And he's like, that girl's built to last. Like I want to build something that lasts. Yeah. And if it's going to last, it has to be built in a healthy manner, meaning that like we as a team and as a church have to begin to implement healthy rhythms in our world now, so that when growth does come, because I promise you, TC3, like it will come. Growth is coming. It might actually be on our doorstep. But if we are not already or beginning to develop healthy rhythms as a body and grow in our spiritual disciplines and our discipleship to Jesus, the growth will not last. Therefore, like, meditate on his word, keep his book of law on your lips always, and whatever you do will be successful and prosper.
So you said something I want to dig into there.
Yeah.
So like I would call this maybe like our last chapter of this conversation.
Yeah.
And that is understanding that when you are ready to build, when you are ready to do that thing, when you're in that season and you're thinking about pushing and you're thinking about what a healthy thing looks like to grow. And you said, built to last. I couldn't help but think about Jesus' teaching about building on the rock. And one of the things I kind of like, I geek out on architecture. I love.
Yeah, I found that out about you today. That was very interesting. I didn't know you were an architecture guy.
Nerd. I'm an architecture nerd.
Yeah, you're just a nerd overall.
I'm a nerd overall.
You're a creative nerd. Who'd have thunk it?
But one of the interesting things that I didn't ever really understand was that it is insanely expensive to build on a rock. I don't know if you've ever thought about this, but you can pitch a tent in the sand. You can actually stick like sticks down into the sand. You don't even need tools.
Right.
And you can build a structure on the sand. And I never realized quite how much more work goes into building a structure on the rock. It's not about finding a firm foundation and going, cool, let's put the tent there. Right?
Yeah.
Building on the rock requires foundational structural work. You know, when you build like a skyscraper in Manhattan, you're digging down into granite, solid granite, and you are spending way more money, not almost, you are spending way more money on your foundation than you are even on the finishes. Then you are like, so we see these buildings and they're beautiful and they've got this finish of like, oh, it's got this beautiful metal finish or this great glass work. All the money for those buildings though are underground.
Wow.
The amount of stories of concrete and pylons and structure that goes in to make sure that it can stick, you know, way up over the ground.
Yeah.
And for any like anything that is built really, really strong and solid, like there's all of this infrastructure that goes into it. And that is so not fun.
Right.
Right? Like you cannot sell that. You sell penthouses, right? Like developers, they sell the view from the very top.
Yeah.
No one even cares what the basement looks like, but that's where
all the money is. That's where
the builder has to spend all their time and money.
Right.
The planning, the engineers, the soil tests, like in all of these structures that are great, that are going to last more than your lifetime and maybe more than the next lifetime, and that are going to be repurposed over and over again. They put this insane amount of sacrifice into working that building on the rock and finding that good foundation. And so the message for me, you know, in kind of reading that after learning more about construction, for me was like, oh man, I got to be willing to make the investment. Like I need to be ready to sacrifice. And for a lot of that, that's time. That's patience. It's not just dollars. It is dollars sometimes, but I think it's ego. It is saying no to what we want right now. To go, I'm believing in this other thing that God is calling me to, but it is not an easy calling.
It's you yourself surrendering, and it's teaching your team that's around you to surrender as well.
Exactly.
It's constant, like, all right, what are the things that we need to surrender to the Lord? What are the things that we still have a hold on? Because those things that we have a hold on, well, they bleed into what's next. And we take those things into what's next, and we're like, yo, well, you got a lot to carry into this freaking hill that we're climbing. And God's like, well, you haven't surrendered it all. So it's going to be hard. I'm trying to get you over the hump, but you got too much stuff that you haven't surrendered yet. So give it up.
Man, we've got so many things that God is calling us to this incredible legacy life. But it is definitely hard. I need people like you in my life to help me be intentional. Thank you.
I need people like you to help me be bougie. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you so much. You thought that was going to go somewhere else, didn't you?
No, that was great.
Okay, good.
As you know, for our listeners, if you have not listened, go back, listen to the other intentional podcasts. Miles, thank you for dropping the wisdom Thank you.
I got
for
nothing.
having these conversations. I love that you give me so much to hold you accountable to in these
always. Yeah,
conversations.
it's so great. Yeah, between you and the church, it's fantastic. It's fantastic. That's where transparency gets you.
But man, I'm excited for TC3. I'm excited to see what God does for you and to see, how you can hold faithful and hold close to Him as you move into this next phase of growth. And what is healthy church growth going to look like for you guys?
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. I appreciate you.
Cool. Until next week, this has been Intentional.
Peace.